So I was not going to do a video on this because this was supposed to be just a refurbishment of this vacuum cleaner to put some new parts, etc. But I screwed up really bad, and this is the model number for it. So what I did, I ordered a new battery because the one he had was very low, and I just plugged it in and turned it on. And I did not check that these wires, they were switched on the new battery, so somehow I burned the vacuum cleaner. So let's do a video and see what's happening. So I already disassembled the vacuum cleaner to get to the board. Now getting into the board, we need to disconnect all of these connectors. And we need to remove this digital thing and this other board to access the burned area. As you can see, this smells really bad and the chip is totally burned out. So I ordered a new chip, so let's try to remove this one. Firstly, we will need to clean the area to remove the coal, otherwise it will be a mess over here and it may connect the pins to one another. So let's then clean it up so we can then remove it with the heat gun. So we will place flux all around the chip so we can help the original solder flow. This should be unleaded solder, then we will add the leaded solder. My heat gun is set at around 350 degrees, so it can dissolve all the solder that we have over here. So once we notice the solder is starting to get liquid, we will pull it up with the tweezer. This area was a little bit harsh to remove, but we managed to. As you can see, it's completely burned out. Let's clean all the area up with a cotton bud. Here, let's just do it in one direction so we don't lift up the pads. And we will now use a toothbrush to try to remove most of this burned area. And now, with the help of the tweezers, let's try to straighten the pads as best as we can and remove these extra parts over here that are glued to each other. With that done, let's clean once again with our toothbrush and some IPA. And let's try to dry it out and clean as best as we can, just to avoid having any remains of burnt on this area, because burnt can conduct electricity and will affect the functions of the chip. And finally we try to straighten them as best as we can so that the chip matches, the legs of the chip match these pads over here. Now, with the area completely dry and cleaned as best as we could, let's see if we still have continuity from one end to the other on the board. So all of them have a connection. So now let's put some flux around this area and then tin all our pins so that we can then put a new chip on this area. Now the hard part. Let's flux up this area and put some wires to complete the pads. This is a really difficult job. It took me several tries. This is the try that I did that was successful. So what I did was put some flux on the tinned pads, tin a little bit of this wire, and then with the heat of the soldering iron we will try to solder it to the pad from the top to the bottom. So with it now soldered in place, let's make sure that the pads are not touching each other so that we don't have a short on that area. And let's clean this flux up with our cotton bud followed by our toothbrush. So after it has dried, let's put a bit of solder mask on each of the ends of this wire so we can hold it in place. Make sure you put enough to cover the wire because we will have to let it dry so it hardens. So we do it on both sides. And then we use our UV light for at least 5 to 8 minutes until it completely dries out. Now we will use an exact to put it on the right size. So we hold the little wire with our exact and twist the wire with our tweezer. And we do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. And we will do the same another 4 times. So in between the time that I was fixing this, my microscope arrived. I bought one on AliExpress and it looks pretty good. It's a little small, but it's pretty good for what I'm doing. And without it, I wouldn't have made it to do these last 3 connections because it is really hard with just a cell phone. So if you would like to have one, just follow the link on the description. You will help the channel grow and I will have more videos for you to see. So what I'm doing now under the microscope is just thinning these pads a little bit better. This is the reason why I used the solder mask on the other 2. And now I will do exactly the same, but with these 3 wires under the microscope, which makes my life a lot more easier. Unfortunately, this microscope does not record sound, so I will either be speaking or I will put some music on so that this doesn't get very boring. So let's do the thinning and then try to put our wires under the microscope and see if it works well. As you can see, this is way harder than I was expecting. It's my first time to do so many of these, so it is kind of hard to make it work, even with the microscope. But, well, makes the life much easier now. So I've seen so many YouTubers do this kind of work, and they do it look like it's flawlessly easy. But it's one of the hardest things I've done on this channel. So as you can see, not everything that you find online is a piece of cake. This is stupidly hard to do. It took me around 6 hours to do all these 5 wires. But again, I do not have the experience they have. But just for you to know, if you plan to do this, it will be hard. So this is the job done after those 4 hours, and it does not look great, but let's hope it does the job. As you can see, I've placed all the wires on the pads and covered them with solder mask, and all the other wires, they look okay. Not the wires, the pads, they look okay. I will now cover these last 2 wires with solder mask, cure them, and then we will try to put the chip in place. So now let's see with the chip if this is anywhere close to what we want it to be. So we need to align the first pin to see if the others match. I remind you that this is extremely small, so it is really difficult. If you touch it with a little bit more strength, it will fly away. So as you can see, I'm struggling a bit with that. And here we go. So the pins, they look like they match, so it will probably work. So let's try then to align the wires as best as we can. so that when we solder the chip we have it on the correct position and on the correct pins without touching other pins. So unfortunately you cannot hear it. As I said, this microscope does not record sound. I'm not sure if there's a way to do it, but I don't think there is. But I'm just doing a quick check on the wires to see if they have a connection to the place where they need to go. And this first one does have it. In fact, all of them do have it. So I'm doing a voiceover, and I can tell you now that they all work as they should. So hopefully this will fix our vacuum cleaner. And I still need to figure a way to put sound on this, real sound, at least maybe try to record, I don't know, with a voice recorder or something like that, so you can hear the sounds when I'm working on the microscope. So now it's time to flux it up. As we had tinned all the pads, we will now place the chip on its final resting position. Make sure that the little arrow matches the little dot on the chip, because that's pin number 1, and that's where the chip needs to be connected from correctly. So I applied heat on the flux. The heat is around 350 degrees Celsius, and we need to make sure to align the pins all correctly so that no bridges are done on these pads. A quick look over here to see which pins are solid, which are not. A lot of them are not solid, so we will need to pass with our soldering iron on this chip to connect them all. So now with our soldering iron we will pass through all of the pins to make sure they are glued, soldered in this case, to the pads on the motherboard. We need to make sure the iron is at around 350 degrees Celsius and have a little bit of solder on it so that we can flow the solder from the pad to the pin of the chip. On this area over here, we obviously need to be aware that it is a sensible area, but our goal is to make sure the wires are connected to the pins of the chip. We will apply a bit of pressure so that the pins get grounded to the pads. And here we will just do the solid test to see if they all are connected in place. Some of these pads were loose, so we need to make sure the pad wiggles when we touch the pin of the chip. And these are quite solid, to be honest. So let's hope these are connected correctly. Now with my phone view, we will now do a small cleaning on the area and test the connection between the pins and the pads on the motherboard. Now we're with our multimeter on continuity. Let's go through the pins and see if they all beep. So they all do. Let's hope that we did a good job over here. But just for you to see, I will put it on a further out view, zoomed out, and do this same test once again, so you can see where exactly I'm touching with our ends of the multimeter. So with that done, I've already assembled the vacuum cleaner, so let's do a test. I already switched the wires on the connector for the battery. Let's hope I don't burn another chip. Truly hopefully I don't, because this is a huge amount of work. So let's test it and see what happens. So battery is connected. Let's turn the plug. So it started working immediately. This is not supposed to happen. Let's turn it around and see what happens when we disconnect and connect the button. So it just flashes there. So I see that there is some sort of short circuit. So when the chip burned out, it probably burned something else. And it's now doing a direct connection from the chip, from the battery to the engine that does the vacuum. So what I will do, since I want to return this vacuum cleaner to its owner ASAP, because it's been with me for quite a while, I will try to find one that works online and it is selling by a cheap price, and just remove the board from one to the other, and maybe in the future I'll try to see if I manage to fix this broken one. So if you find this video useful in any way, let me know. Subscribe to the channel, leave it a like, and I will definitely see you probably every week from now on. You have a good one. Bye.